Alabama folk singer is dead after she was attacked by a pair of coyotes.
What is the monkey doing? Tell me what the monkey...
He hit your face off!
We actually have a trainer in the water with one of our whales.
If I show weakness, if I retreat, I may be hurt, I may be killed.
Baby Azaria Chamberlain was taken by a dingo back in 1980.
Howdy doody, my little cuties. Welcome back, guys, gals, and my non-binary pals to Man It Is the only true crime podcast on the entire fucking internet where all the killers are real animals. Whether it's bitings, scratchings, maulings, or clawings, we are here to talk about it. Oh, I gotta be honest with you, gang. I'm feeling a little dusty today. I was in Sydney last night and, yeah, I had maybe one too many Long Island iced teas. I probably had like 5 too many, if I'm being honest. And yeah, I mean, you don't need to know this, but like an irresponsible parent, I am making my problems your problems. Yeah, no, I feel good now. I feel this is right now, currently feeling okay. The 3-hour train trip this morning from Sydney to Newcastle, not as enjoyable. There was a dude who, like, he brought, like, I get it. Sometimes it's the only way you can travel. He bought, like, 3 surfboards and a bunch of, like, garbage bags onto the train. And he sat right near me. And I didn't mind that so much. It was more the, he took his shoes off. And he had his big, ugly feet. And he put them on the seat. And he, like, I'm not a foot guy. Like, I know that some people have foot fetishes, and I'm not here to judge, all right? I sincerely never want to yuck your yum. If you are into something and it doesn't hurt anyone else, hey, have at it. If that means you like Tootsies, buddy, you lick those Tootsies. But I am not one of those people, and I can't see how anyone could be after they saw what I'd seen. I'm talking bunions. I'm talking ingrown toes. I'm talking corns. A corn? Have you ever had a corn? I had a corn on my little toe when I was a kid, and I thought I was dying. It was awful. Had to put these little patches on, and it didn't work. And I just begged Mum. I was like, can we just get like a steak knife and just try to chop this thing off? And thankfully, my mum did not let me do that, because I think that probably would have been a bad decision. Yeah. This is the official policy of this podcast, gang, is self-surgery. Very rarely a good idea. I know it's gross, but I also, another side story, when I was about 20, I had a what do you call it? Like a boil, I guess, a boil on my right thigh. I don't know how that happened. Like, it was really gross. It was really painful, and it was there for a few weeks. And rather than like go to the doctor or like, pay to get it lanced properly, I thought what I would do is I'd just take my like nail file, like the, nail kit that I had, and a bottle of vodka into the bathroom for an hour and sort it out myself. And like, look, I'll be honest, I nailed it. The boil was gone, along with probably at least 3 or 4 cups of my own blood. But it worked. But I did leave a pretty nasty scar, and I'm pretty sure I could have given myself an infection from doing that. So yeah, no, don't try to avoid doing self-surgery on yourself. You're not James Bond digging bullets out of your shoulder in the toilet. No, come on. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. Today, we are here to talk about crocodiles. The saltwater crocodile. Salties, as we call them in Australia. I've actually never heard an Australian call it a salty, but I'm sure that we do. You got a salty and a freshie. And the freshies, they're not too bad. I don't mind a freshie. But a salty, that is one badass animal that I do not ever need to see in real life. We've talked about saltwater crocodiles before on the show, but I don't know if we've ever covered them as a full story. One of the earliest stories we did was Gustav, but he's not a saltwater crocodile. He was a Nile crocodile from Africa. I believe so. Am I correct in thinking that? I think I am. Saltwater crocodiles can actually get bigger than Nile crocodiles. In fact, just a little bit of trivia for you. In Melbourne, and I've been there, the Melbourne Aquarium, they actually have the largest captive saltwater crocodile in the world, I believe. And he's huge. You can go on a big glass platform above him, and it's just a behemoth of an animal. It's absolutely huge. But we're talking about saltwater crocodiles today, in particular because we are talking about an animal attack, which is not new for the show. But one thing that is kind of, well, not new for the show, but we don't tackle this very often, it's actually a survival story. This person, spoiler alert, made it through the ordeal, albeit with some pretty grievous injuries. But this person survived. I'm talking about Val Plumwood. And I actually didn't know the story until recently, until I started looking for stories to cover for this week's episode. It's a really cool story, Val Plumwood. So we're going to get into that right now, toot sweet. But before we do that, gang, I just want to quickly say, penis. That's it. Okay, let's get into it. So the northern part of Australia, I'm talking like far north Queensland, the Northern Territory, that's what is colloquially known in Australia as the top end. We refer to it as the top end. And it's a beautiful place. I've been there once, and I'd love to go there again. And if you ever get the chance to visit Australia, I would recommend the top end as a definite place to go. It's like the outback. It is untamed Australia. It's crazy. But when you picture it, you're probably picturing, a relatively dry, desert-ish kind of environment. And that's not always the case. Because when the rains hit Australia's top end, it can really transform the entire landscape. So Kakadu National Park is the area that we're talking about today. And in the wet season, Kakadu is drowned in floodwaters. Rivers burst their banks, forests vanish under brown currents, and the land becomes a labyrinth of hidden channels. It's breathtaking, but it's also extremely dangerous because this land belongs to crocodiles. Now, this is the story of a woman who learned that lesson the hardest way possible. Val Plumwood, an environmental philosopher, feminist, thinker, writer, and a rebel. She went out for what she thought was just a simple canoe trip in 1985, but she came back with her body shredded, her bones exposed, and her worldview forever transformed. But Val's attack is just one chapter in a much larger book of blood. Because crocodiles have been killing, and in a lot of cases eating, people for as long as humans have dared to set foot near their waters. Today, we're diving into the world of the saltwater crocodile, the biology, the brutality, and the body count. But let's step back for a moment and talk about our main character of this story, Val Plumwood. Who was she, and what carried her to that canoe on that day? Well, Val was born Val Morell in 1939 in rural New South Wales. Her childhood wasn't privileged, her family struggled, money was tight, and from very early on she developed a rebellious streak. She never accepted the idea that the world had to be taken as it was, and this stubbornness shaped her whole life. Now, Val was incredibly smart. She was a voracious reader, and by the 1960s she was breaking into the male-dominated world of philosophy. She carved out a place for herself with ideas that challenged the human-centric view of the world. She argued that nature wasn't just something out there for us to dominate, but something to be part of, to be bound up in, and to be dependent on. She was also a feminist and a deep ecologist. She was an activist, and maybe most importantly, she was a questioner. And that questioning took her into the wilderness again and again and again. She lived in a stone house built by hand in the bush just outside Canberra, and she loved being close to the wild. She really did believe that being in the wild sharpened your sense of reality. So in February of 1985, when she set off into Kakadu National Park, she wasn't just some naive tourist. She was absolutely a seasoned outdoorswoman. She knew what it meant to be in wild places. But knowledge and preparation can only take you so far when you're stepping into Croc country. Now, as mentioned before, Kakadu in the wet season, it's like a completely different world. If you've only ever seen it in the dry, with its, big red cliffs and billabongs, you'd barely recognize it. Because in the wet season, the monsoon rains pour down day after day. The rivers swell until they burst their banks, and the floodplains merge into vast inland seas. The forest floor drowns under brown, rushing water. And the air is heavy. It's thick with the smell of mud, plant life breathing, and humidity. Mosquitoes rise in black clouds. The calls of birds echo strangely through the soaked canopy. And always, always, you feel the presence of water. It pushes in from every side, turning paths into channels, channels into rivers. And this is the season where crocodiles thrive. These animals thrive all year round, but the wet season is where they truly, truly kill it. For them, the floods are a gift. It means that they can move anywhere. They can slide through drowned forests, they can vanish under the surface, and they can turn up when you least expect them. Now, the locals in Kakadu know this, and the indigenous people of the region have understood it, that the wet season belongs to the Croc, so you better tread carefully, or you're not going to be treading at all. But on this day, Val Plumwood was on a mission. She had set out in a borrowed green fiberglass canoe, planning to paddle across a channel and pick up a walking stick. Simple enough, yeah? But when the landscape itself is transformed into a maze of flooded trees, simple evaporates very fast. She paddled under a canoe of paper bark trees, the rain spitting down in silver sheets, her canoe rocking on the swollen current. All around her, the forest looked drowned and endless, every tree trunk mirrored in the brown water. Landmarks vanished, directions become unreliable. She was deep in the thick of it, and quite soon, she was a little bit lost. Hours passed, and she pushed deeper and deeper into the channels looking for a way out, trying to reorient herself. She then stopped at one point on a rocky outcrop, climbed out of her canoe, and ate a soggy sandwich in the rain. And while she was sitting there, dripping wet, eating her soggy sanger, something stirred at the edge of her mind. A prickling sensation that you get sometimes when you feel like you're being watched. Now, Val, she sort of brushed this off. She thought it might just be the nerves of being alone in a storm-drenched wilderness. But she climbed back in her canoe and pushed on. And that's when she saw it. I'm going to read you a quote now that Val wrote. She said, "When I pulled over my canoe in the driving rain to a rock outcrop rising out of the swamp for a hasty, sodden lunch, I experienced the unfamiliar sensation of being watched. Having never been one for timidity in the philosophy or in real life, I decided rather than to return defeated to my sticky caravan to explore a clear, deeper channel to the river I had travelled along the previous day. I had not gone more than 5 or 10 meters down the channel when rounding a bend, I saw ahead of me in midstream what looked like a floating stick. One I did not recall passing on my way up. As the current moved me towards it, the stick appeared to develop eyes." That's right. Around the bend in the channel, half submerged in the water, lay what anyone could have viewed as just a simple log. Still, dark and harmless. Just another piece of the flooded forest. I think I'm having an issue with my sound. Can you hear that? Hopefully that's... That's the problem with live recording, guys. Okay, hopefully that's fine. Anyway, this is Kakadu in the wet season. And in crocodile country, sometimes logs have eyes. That's because that log that Val Plumwood spotted on that day was not a log at all. It was a saltwater crocodile. And not just any croc. This was an apex predator. An animal that had been perfecting its killing craft since before humans even existed on this planet. Now let's take a moment here, let's pause, and let's talk about saltwater crocodiles, because to understand the terror that Val was about to face, you really need to understand what she was up against. You know what a crocodile looks like, but let's go a little bit deeper. So these animals, they're living relics of the dinosaur age. And I know that phrase gets thrown around a lot when we talk about animals, you know, they're just living dinosaurs. I want you to really think about what that means. These animals were around with the dinosaurs. They're not dinosaurs themselves, but they were with them. And that's how long they have been on this planet, evolving to become apex predators. Their ancestors prowled prehistoric swamps while the T-Rex still roared across the continents. And in all that time, over 200 million years, crocodiles have actually barely changed. And why do you think that is? Why haven't they changed? It's because they don't need to. Because their design is already perfect. A saltwater crocodile can grow over 6 meters long and can weigh more than a small car. Its body is armored in thick scales, and its jaws are lined with conical teeth designed not for chewing, but for grabbing and holding. And once these jaws snap shut, there's no muscle in the world strong enough to pry them open. Their bite force is the most powerful of any animal on the planet, measured at over 37 pounds per square inch. That's enough to crush bones like chalk. And I've seen videos of them do that. They throw like a pig skull at the thing. It crumbles under the pressure of these teeth. Now, salties are ambush predators. They don't stalk their prey with dramatic charges. They wait. They wait hours. Sometimes they wait days without moving a muscle, just drifting with the current looking like debris, and their eyes and nostrils just breaking out of the surface. These animals are masters of patience. When the time is right, they strike, lightning fast. And despite their huge size, they can launch from the water with explosive power, hitting their target before the prey even registers the danger. And then comes one of the most famous wrestling moves in the entire animal kingdom, the death roll. The infamous bone-snapping spin designed to drag animals underwater, to tear their flesh apart, and to drown whatever is still alive. Now, Kakadu National Park in the wet season is prime hunting ground for these animals. Fish swarm through the flooded channels. Wallabies, snakes, feral pigs, and even buffalo can get stranded in the water. And every so often, so does a human. And here's the really special thing about saltwater crocodiles. They don't view human beings as anything special, okay? To them, we're just another warm body. We're just meat wrapped in skin. We're a little bit slower and clumsier and maybe a little bit more annoying than the animals that they're used to dealing with. But they're not picky eaters. We're easy pickings. They will go for us. Now, like a tiger or a lion typically will avoid a human. A crocodile and a shark as well. Like, sharks don't like attacking you. Crocodiles absolutely see us as food. There's no difference to them between us or another animal. A crocodile, a kangaroo or a human, to a crocodile, it doesn't matter. We're just lunch, okay? So Val had actually been warned before this trip. In fact, park authorities had stressed, don't go into the channels in the wet season. But Val was confident, maybe a little bit overconfident, considering what happened. But it's not hard to see why she was confident. She'd spent years in the bush, and she was an experienced, and honestly, when you're sitting in a canoe, it's easy to forget what's underneath you. But as she paddled through the drowned forest, one of those ancient predators had already locked onto her. Now just imagine the crocodile's perspective here. The water is murky, but alive with vibration. And crocodiles don't need to see well to hunt. They can feel the world through nerves that are so sensitive they can detect the faintest ripple. Every paddle stroke Val made, every shift of the canoe that broadcasted her presence. She was like a drumbeat moving through the water. She was pretty impossible to miss. So the crocodile would have followed her silently, keeping its profile low, barely disturbing the surface of the water. It may have shadowed her for minutes or for hours. And that's the thing, when you're in croc country, you actually don't even know how long you've been watched. You don't know how long you've been their prey. You don't see them until they've decided that you're going to see them, and then that's too late. You're lunch. Now, there are stories from indigenous rangers that have been echoed in news reports around Kakadu of crocodiles shadowing fishing boats for miles, waiting for someone to lean over the side. There are records of people being snatched off riverbanks, dragged from campfires, even taken while bathing in shallow water. 1 second, everything feels safe, and the next, it's just teeth and darkness. And that is what Val was drifting towards. She was alone in a flimsy fiberglass canoe, basically an eggshell against a monster that had survived the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. No weapons, no backpack, no escape route except the water itself. And in that water, a pair of glassy eyes had fixed onto her. The canoe drifted quietly along the flooded channel, its green fiberglass belly gliding over the water like a leaf. The rain had softened into a mist, drumming gently on the canopy overhead. For a moment, Val Plumwood felt something close to calm. She was still lost, yes, but she'd paddled out of sight, out of tight spots before. She was determined, resourceful, and she believed that she would make it back. And then, without warning, the world suddenly exploded. From beneath the water, the crocodile launched upward like a missile. Its jaws clamped down on the side of her canoe with a sound like splitting timber. The fiberglass shrieked. The boat rocked violently, nearly capsizing, as the massive reptile thrashed and heaved, its teeth tearing grooves into the hull. Just imagine that moment. You're alone, lost. Your lifeline is the canoe beneath you, and suddenly that lifeline is being shredded by something with the power of a wrecking ball. Val's heart must have been hammering, her lungs seized with shock. She fought to steady the canoe, but the Croc wasn't having it. Its head, the size of a suitcase, burst through the water, its eyes cold, its teeth glistening with river slime. For a split second, their gazes met, and she realized the truth. This wasn't just a territorial display or a mistake. This wasn't a warning. It was a hunt. The crocodile came again, slamming its body into the canoe. The fiberglass cracked. Val was thrown off balance, and then it struck with precision. It lunged up, its jaws wide, and it clamped directly onto her leg. The pain she felt was instant and blinding. Teeth like knives punctured through the muscle, tearing skin in ragged gashes. Blood gushed into the brown floodwater. She screamed, the sound swallowed by the forest. And before she could even process the agony, the crocodile did what a crocodile does best. It began the death roll. The world spun into chaos. She was wrenched from the canoe and dragged under the water. The spin was violent, bone-jarring. Her body twisted like a rag doll in the grip of something far stronger than her. Every rotation drove teeth deeper, shredded tissue, and filled her mouth and lungs with foul, muddy water. This is how crocodiles kill. They don't just bite. They disorient, they drown, and they shred. The death roll is designed to snap bones, spines, rip limbs, tear chunks of flesh free. Survivors of crocodile attacks describe it as being like in a washing machine full of knives. And that's what Val was experiencing. She was in that washing machine full of knives. Except she had no certainty that she'd ever surface again. But Val was a fighter. She had been her whole life. And through sheer will, she twisted, kicked, and somehow managed to wrench herself free. Maybe the crocodile's grip slipped on its own, with, bloody flesh slipping from its teeth. Maybe it was responsible for nearly trying to get a better hold. Whatever the reason, she shot to the surface and she gasped for air, coughing water from her lungs. But she had no time to breathe again. The crocodile surged once more, jaws slamming into her thigh. Another eruption of agony, another roll. She was dragged down, the water turning red around her. Her body was battered against roots, rocks, and branches. She fought. She clawed at the monster's armored head, struck out wildly in blind panic, and somehow, once again, she managed to slip free. This second escape might have felt like a miracle. She burst back into the air, the rain cold on her face, her lungs screaming for oxygen. She clawed her way to a half-submerged log, clinging desperately and hoping that that sunken log was not another crocodile. The forest spun around her in dizzying confusion. But the crocodile wasn't finished. It came at her a third time, a final, ferocious strike. Its jaws seized her across the hip, crushing her bones and ripping more flesh. The roll began again, this time slower, more methodical, like the animal was certain that the fight was over. She felt herself being pulled deeper into the darkness, her body breaking and her blood clouding the water. And here's where the story takes a horrifying tangent, because this isn't a unique tactic. Saltwater crocodiles have killed people like this countless times. In 1985, the same year as Val's attack, a young man camping near Darwin went to wash his hands in a billabong. A croc lunged, seizing him by the torso, and rolled him under. His friends described the water turning red, his body disappearing in seconds, never to be seen again. In 2014 in Kakadu, a 12-year-old boy was taken while swimming. His body was found 4 days later, torn apart. And for the most part, for most victims, that third strike would be the end. There's no escape here. There's only silence, broken by the snap of jaws and the churn of water. But somehow, we don't know how, Val Plumwood broke free again. It's the power of ecofeminism, everyone. She surfaced a final time, coughing blood, half drowned, her body shredded, her leg and hip hanging in ribbons of flesh. The croc, perhaps momentarily confused, sank back into the depths. Maybe it thought she was finished already. Maybe it was just planning to return. But Val, with the last of her strength, dragged herself towards a tree trunk rising from the floodwaters. She clung to it, bleeding, gasping, her vision darkening. She was still alive, but barely, and she knew that the crocodile was still out there, waiting for her. This ordeal wasn't over, not by a long shot. Val Plumwood clung to the tree trunk, blood streaming from her wounds, her heart hammering so violently she could feel it rattling in her chest. The water around her was dark, and dark with her own blood, swirling in lazy crimson eddies. In crocodile country, this is the last place you would want to be, bleeding into the water, basically signaling to every predator in the area that dinner is ready. She knew that she couldn't stay there. If the crocodile came back, she had no doubt it would. She would be finished. But the alternative was just as terrifying. To leave the tree, she had to climb back into the water. And this is where survival comes down to not strength, but wits. Most people, in the face of an attack like this, well, they don't make it. Not necessarily because their bodies fail, but because their minds surrender. They let panic take over, and they freeze up. They just surrender. They give up. But Val Plumwood was not going to surrender. She had something still inside her. It was that stubbornness that she'd had through her whole life, a refusal to yield, and that had carried her through every fight of her life. She wasn't going to die floating in that swamp, not if she had a shred of a chance. So she let go. Her body was decimated. Her thigh was torn open in a wound so deep you could see the pale flashes of bone. Her hip was entirely mangled, muscle and sinew stripped and dangling. Every movement sent waves of searing pain through her body. Blood poured profusely, slicking her skin, soaking the water, and yet somehow she forced herself forward. She swam. And it wasn't graceful. It wasn't fast, but it didn't need to be. It was a desperate, weak strokes, one arm at a time, kicking one leg, coughing water from lungs that had already nearly drowned. Behind her, every ripple felt like it could be the crocodile rising again, jaws opening, ready to finish what it had started. She half expected at any second to feel those teeth close over her spine. The forest seemed endless. The waterlogged trees stretched on and on and on, each one looking like salvation but offering no easy escape. She clung to branches, pulled herself along, slid across mats of vegetation, dragging her broken body inch by inch towards higher ground. And here's where we have to stop and consider, how the fuck does someone survive this? How does someone survive having lost this much blood? By all rights, Val Plumwood should have been dead already. The human body can only carry about 5 liters of blood, and by the descriptions of her wounds, she must have lost a horrifying amount of that. Yet adrenaline, the body's last-ditch chemical miracle, kept her going. Adrenaline floods the system in moments of mortal danger, numbing pain, sharpening focus, and forcing muscles to work beyond exhaustion. It is the difference between collapsing and crawling. There are parallels here with other attacks as well. Take, for example, the 2018 case of a spear fisherman in Queensland who was mauled by a saltwater crocodile. His arm was nearly severed, bones were shattered, and his flesh was left dangling, yet he managed to swim back to shore before collapsing. Or take stories of shark attack survivors who, with limbs missing, still managed to swim through their own blood trails to safety. It's a grim reminder here that the human body is terrifying in what it can achieve when it's cornered. Back in Kakadu, Val pulled herself out of the water at last. She found a patch of mud and grass just above the floodline and collapsed. The world was spinning. Her vision darkened at the edges. She was dizzy from blood loss. She was trembling and barely able to breathe. And that's when the hallucinations started. Later, she would describe this moment in almost mystical terms. She felt herself slipping into a dreamlike state, the forest fading, her body floating above the pain. Some part of her mind whispered that it would be okay to just stop, just to let go, to sink back into the darkness. But another part of her, the philosopher, the fighter, the woman who had built her own stone home with her bare hands, well, that part refused. She clung onto consciousness with the same stubbornness that she had clung onto that tree trunk. She was not going to die like this. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to crawl. Just picture this for a moment. A woman, alone, torn open, blood caked down her legs, dragging her broken body through the mud like a wounded animal. Every handful of earth she clawed forward was a victory. Every tree root she pulled herself over was a mountain. The wet season forest closed in around her, steaming, buzzing with insects, the smell of wet earth and blood thick in the air. And she wasn't even safe yet. Crocodiles are patient hunters, guys. There was every chance that the same croc, or another one, was still shadowing her from the water, waiting for her to collapse within reach. But she kept crawling. Minutes stretched into hours, maybe more. Her strength ebbed. Her blood loss was catastrophic. She was dizzy, nauseated, and fading. But some sliver of will still carried her forward. Finally, she stumbled upon help. 2 rangers out in the park found her near collapse. They saw a woman who looked like she had been fed through a meat grinder, lacerations crisscrossing her body, flesh peeled away from her thigh, her hip pulped into ruin. Even then, she was still lucky. The rangers managed to act fast. They stabilized her, got her onto a stretcher, and evacuated her by helicopter. She was rushed to Darwin Hospital, where surgeons fought to piece her back together. The wounds were catastrophic. Muscle was stripped away, nerves were severed, and infection was already starting to take hold. But Val Plumwood survived. If anything's worth a clapping sound effect, it's that. Now, the survival wasn't the end of her story. Val Plumwood would spend months recovering, enduring multiple surgeries, battling infection, and rebuilding her strength. The scars were permanent. The pain was going to be permanent as well. But so too was her determination to make sense of what happened, and not just for herself, but for the world. Because for Val, the attack wasn't just an accident, and it wasn't just bad luck either. It was a confrontation with something that she had spent her entire life thinking about. The idea that humans are not separate from nature. We are not untouchable. We're not above the food chain. We're still in there. Out there, in the swamp, she had just become another animal. She was just another meal. Like the sandwich, the soggy sandwich that she ate on the rock, she was that crocodile sandwich. Val Plumwood survived, and that in itself is remarkable. But surviving was only the beginning of a journey that would test her mind as brutally as the crocodile had tested her body. In the weeks and months following the attack, she endured a series of surgeries. She had skin grafts covering shredded flesh. Doctors worked to repair torn muscle and damaged nerves. And infections were a common threat. Melindiosis, a tropical bacterial disease common in wet season floodwaters, took hold in some of her wounds. Every movement, every attempt to walk caused her agony that radiated from her torn leg to her hip, a constant reminder that her encounter with a crocodile had not released her. It had just reshaped her very body. And yet, as her body healed, Val's mind churned with questions far beyond her personal suffering. She wrote extensively about what had happened, not in a sensationalist way like I often do on my show, but more in a philosophical, almost poetic language. She refused to frame herself as purely a victim. Instead, she examined the experience as a profound lesson in vulnerability and humanity, in the reality of being prey. Now, that's actually the title of her essay, Being Prey, and this essay is a meditation on that experience. She describes the attack as a moment of brutal clarity, a confrontation with the raw truth of existence. In those seconds underwater, spun around by the crocodile's death roll, she writes, she was stripped of all pretense, all human exceptionalism. She was, quote, meat, like any other creature. And it was this understanding that reoriented her philosophy. Val's reflections stretch beyond her own survival. She questions a cultural arrogance, a belief that humans exist outside nature and are untouchable by its laws. Val says, we are not always the predator. Sometimes we are simply the prey. This idea resonates beyond Kakadu and beyond Australia, beyond crocodiles. It applies to sharks, bears, and all other apex predators that we cover on this show. It applies to the way that humans approach the natural world with hubris, building settlements on floodplains and swimming in waters that we barely know, and just assuming that the nature will bend to our will. Her story also intersects with countless other attacks in Australian history. Let's take the 2013 death of Sean Cole in the Mary River. He'd been swimming in darkness, ignoring warnings, when a saltwater crocodile seized him and dragged him under. Or in 2021, there was an attack on Andrew Heard near Townsville, where two crocodiles coordinated in an almost unprecedented display of predatory behavior. Now, unlike Val, these victims did not escape, highlighting just how narrow the line between survival and death truly is in croc country. And yet, even in the face of such horror, Val emerged with a sense of awe. She described a gratitude for the experience, a recognition of the crocodile's role in the ecosystem. This was a creature that had been shaped over millions of years, perfectly adapted to its environment. It had just followed its instinct. It was hunting effectively and executed the only strategy it knew. In that sense, Val wrote, it was neither cruel nor evil, it just simply was. This perspective, remarkable for someone who had endured such trauma, underscores the depth of her philosophical thinking. Because for Val, the attack wasn't just about survival, it was about understanding her place in the world, the fragility of a human life, and the necessity of humility in the faces of forces that are far older and more powerful than us. There's also a practical side to this reflection too. Val became an advocate, in subtle ways, for respecting wildlife and understanding danger. Her story was a cautionary one. The floods of Kakadu, the hidden rivers, the camouflage of a crocodile on the surface, these are not just anomalies. That's just nature behaving exactly as it's supposed to. Humans must respect that reality or pay the ultimate price. Her experience continues to inform how we think about predator-prey relationships today. Researchers studying crocodile attacks often cite Val's case as one of the rare instances of survival under extraordinary circumstances, and as a touchstone for understanding more of the behavior of saltwater crocodiles and the mindset required to survive an attack. In a broader sense, Val's ordeal blurs the lines between philosophy and survival. She writes not only about the physical terror, but also about the psychological transformation that comes from confronting your own mortality so directly. Becoming prey, she concluded, teaches lessons that are impossible to learn from a classroom or from a book. You cannot understand vulnerability until something like this has held you in its jaws, rolled you around like a rag doll, and left you barely clinging to life. Her story resonates so hard because it's so unique and also so universal. It's unique because very few people could possibly survive what she survived. It's universal because all humans in one way or another are prey. We're prey to illness, to misfortune, to forces greater than ourselves, and sometimes, yes, prey to other animals. Her encounter with the crocodile became a vivid metaphor for this fundamental truth. And so when we retell Val Plumwood's story, when we trace the waterlogged channels of Kakadu and imagine the jaws of that ancient predator snapping around her leg, we are reminded of something truly profound. Fear is natural. Respect is necessary. Survival is fragile. And sometimes the deepest lessons in life come not from triumph, but from the narrowest escape from death itself. Val Plumwood's story is extraordinary, but she's far from the only human to have come face to face with these prehistoric hunters. Australia has long been the hunting ground of the saltwater crocodile, and the history of attacks is harrowing and instructive. For example, we mentioned Sean Murray, the 24-year-old in 2013, who went swimming in the Mary River in Queensland. And despite local warnings that a massive 5-metre saltwater crocodile had been spotted, Sean still waded into the water at night. In seconds, the predator seized him, dragging him under before witnesses could intervene. His body was recovered days later, showing the devastation and effectiveness of the crocodile attack. Flesh torn, limbs battered, and a pattern of injuries consistent with multiple death rolls. Unlike Val, Sean had no tree to cling onto, no luck to pull him out of the jaws of death, and his fate reminds us how thin the line is between life and death. And then, of course, there's the 69-year-old retiring fisher, Andrew Heard, who was attacked in 2021 in Townsville. When he disappeared while tending to his dinghy along a small estuary, rescuers found the boat and it was mangled and bloodied. Later, investigators concluded that Andrew had fallen victim to not one, but two crocodiles, and reports actually suggested that a large male and a smaller female were working in tandem, which rarely happens in the wild with crocodiles. These animals had then torn him apart before he could reach safety. The water was littered with debris, including clothing, splashes of blood, bone, and human meat. It was a gruesome testament to the Croc's predatory intelligence. There are countless other cases. We've mentioned a few of them. The 1985 attack on a man near Darwin who wandered too close to a riverbank, and within moments he was dragged into the water by a crocodile. Body never recovered. The 2014 death of a 12-year-old boy playing near Kakadu, well, he was snatched in broad daylight, and eyewitnesses reported the child was taken within seconds. What makes these attacks particularly terrifying, and what Val experienced herself, was the sheer stealth and patience of a saltwater crocodile. They rarely chase prey for long distances. Instead, they choose to ambush. They sense vibrations in the water, detecting heat, and can remain completely submerged for up to an hour while waiting. The camouflage of a crocodile is nearly perfect as well. Their scaly backs break the surface like floating logs, and their stillness makes them almost invisible. For anyone wading, swimming, or boating in the water, a crocodile can appear in seconds without warning. There's also the gruesome efficiency of their killing method. Once a crocodile clamps down its jaws, it begins the death roll, which is a terrifyingly precise maneuver. Survivors have described spinning while being thrown against rocks, roots, and vegetation while teeth tear through muscles and sinew. If the predator's grip fails, it will readjust, reposition, and repeat. The attack often ends with a drowning, as the crocodile often breaks the victim or the animal's legs or arms, meaning it's unable to swim to the surface. Of course, flesh and bone are also torn in ragged ribbons, and the water is clouded with blood and sediment, making it impossible to see. Val survived these odds, but most people don't. Even more chilling are the cooperation or unusual attacks. Saltwater crocodiles are usually solitary hunters, but there are documented cases of two working in tandem, such as in Andrew Heard's case. And in some regions, crocodiles have been known to ambush groups of people, particularly when the prey congregates along the banks. The water hides them, the currents conceal them, and they can strike with a power and precision that seems almost surgical. And yet, beyond the gore and the terror, these stories, of course, are cautionary tales. They reveal not only the physical strength of the crocodiles, but their evolutionary perfection. Saltwater crocodiles have survived on this planet for over 4 million years. It's a long than that. Millions and millions of years, because they are effective, patient, and adaptable. They are apex predators. They are the best example of an apex predator, I think, perfectly tuned to their environment. And they can take human arrogance as little seriously as a cat notices a mouse. For Val Plumwood, these other stories would have served as grim reminders that her survival was extraordinary, but it was also fragile. She was lucky. She was kind of prepared as well. She knew what she was getting into. And she had a singular combination of physical strength, willpower, and presence of mind. For every Val, however, there are dozens or hundreds of people who are not as fortunate. Val's story, set against the backdrop of these other attacks, highlights a terrifying reality for Northern Australia. In these northern Australian waterways, crocodiles are not just legends. They're not mythological creatures or fables, and they're not something you can just outsmart with caution alone. These are living, breathing, perfectly adapted predators, patient and deadly. And sometimes, in an instant, they can remind humans we are not the masters of this land. To the crocodiles of the north, we're just meat. And that was the story of Val Plumwood. Okay, gang, quite a long story today, so let's get right into the rest of the episode. You know what's coming up, guys. Of course you do. It's the Scratch of the Day. I don't even need to explain myself, do I? You guys know what the Scratch of the Day is, where we look at animal attacks in the news and we talk about them. A big animal attack story in the news this week. This happened either yesterday or I believe maybe this morning. It's a developing story, but an Oklahoma animal handler has been attacked and killed by a tiger during a performance. This actually occurred on the 23rd of September. There's two big cat stories we're going to talk about today. This one including a tiger and another one including a lion. But let's do the tiger one first. This is a pretty terrible story. And the two stories I want to talk about have a lot in common. Let's read the story. An investigation continued Monday into what prompted a tiger to attack and kill its handler over the weekend while performing in front of a crowd at an animal preserve in Oklahoma, authorities said. The attack unfolded on Saturday at the Growler Pines Tiger Preserve in Hugo in southeast Oklahoma near the Texan border and claimed the life of 37-year-old Ryan Eastley, the owner of the preserve, Choctaw County Sheriff Terry Park told ABC News on Monday. Easley and the tiger were performing for an audience when the animal turned on Easley, attacking and killing him. Quote, "It happened towards the end of the show in which there were people that saw this incident occur," Park said. "No one knows other than God above as to what made the tiger attack the handler/trainer." Park said that the tiger, which Easley had raised since it was a cub, bit Easley around the neck and shoulder, likely killing him instantly. The sheriff said Easley's wife and young daughter were amongst those who witnessed the attack, and that when the tiger stepped away from Easley, the wife rushed into the cage and removed the animal to another cage. Park said the incident was reported at about 2 p.m. on Saturday. He said the sheriff's deputies, along with Hugo police officers and Choctaw County Emergency Medical Service crews, were dispatched to the preserve, but that Easley was already dead when they arrived. Easley's body was taken to the medical examiner's office in Tulsa, Oklahoma for an autopsy, Park said. Park said that an agency that licensed the preserve also responded to the scene and is conducting an investigation. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is the agency that licensed the facility and conducted inspections there, according to the preserve. The USDA has not responded to ABC News' request for comment. Quote, "They have been there for several years," Park said of the preserve. "The community loves them. A lot of people came here to watch the shows." The Growler Pines Tiger Preserve released a statement on its Facebook page on Sunday announcing Easley's death. Quote, "It is with profound sorrow that we confirm the tragic loss of Ryan Easley, who lost his life in an accident involving a tiger under his care." The statement continues, "Ryan was a passionate advocate of wildlife conservation. His love for animals, especially big cats, was evident in every aspect of his life. He dedicated his life to the protection and care of these magnificent animals, and he believed deeply in the mission of Growler Pines to provide a safe and forever enriching home for the animals in his care. Growler Pines was more than just a place of work for Ryan. It was his calling, his passion, and his life's purpose." The Humane World for Animals, formerly known as the Humane Society in the United States, said in a statement on Monday that Easley owned 10 tigers, and that prior to opening his preserve, he ran Show Me Tigers, which the organization described as a circus act featuring tigers that traveled through the U.S. The organization said Easley acquired young tigers from zoo operator Joseph Maldonado, also known as Joe Exotic, the former Oklahoma zoo owner featured in the 2020 Netflix documentary series Tiger King, who is now serving a 21-year prison sentence for perpetrating a murder-for-hire scheme and for the killing and selling of tigers. Ryan Easley's death was a sad and preventable tragedy, and we hope it serves as a reminder of the danger and cruelty of other operations who still use wild animals for entertainment, said Laura Hagan, director of the Captive Wildlife for Humane World of Animals. Look, that's the story there. I'm not going to chime in too much. I don't know enough about this particular preserve. There is not a fine line. I'll say there's there's a spectrum of these kind of places between like a zoo, something like Taronga Zoo, like a really well-established institution that cares for animals, and conservation is kind of like its main thing, and the entertainment and education of people is almost like a secondary effect of that thing. Then you have other places where it's like it's more like a circus, where we have these animals and they are there to entertain, and we're not necessarily super caring about their experience. And then you have places like what it seems like this is, where it's somewhere in the middle of a zoo and a circus. I'm not going to comment on if this place should have been running the way it was. I will note that it does. Oklahoma is a funny place for tiger attacks. I think Oklahoma is like the capital of the U.S. when it comes to owning exotic animals. I think that the laws in Oklahoma are really, really loose there. Or maybe it just seems that way because of the whole Tiger King thing. Did not expect Tiger King to pop up into this story at all. Really, that surprised me when I was reading through. maybe we should do a watch through of Tiger King, because that is a seriously crazy, crazy story. The other story I wanted to talk about that involved a big cat attack is a pretty wild one. It was sent to me on Instagram by a follower. I'm blanking on the name right now, so I apologize for that. I'm trying to find the link. I sent it to my wife because it's so fucking nuts. But yeah, the headline reads, Lions tear apart zookeeper live in front of safari park tourists. So already very similar story, but this one is from, I believe, Asia. So let's read the story. The moment zookeeper gets eaten alive by lions in front of horrified tourists. A zookeeper has been mauled to death by a pack of lions in a safari park in front of a group of horrified tourists who could do little more than beat their car horns. Shocking images have captured the moment a pack of predators pounced on a member of staff at Safari World in Bangkok, Thailand, after he stepped out of his vehicle to open an enclosure. During the attack, which occurred at around 11 a.m. local time, 3 or 4 of the lions savaged the keeper so viciously that his bones were visible. The terrifying assault unfolded before a group of petrified tourists who were rendered powerless and honking their car horns in a desperate bid to scare off the lions. Stunned witnesses have revealed how they were positioned less than 10 meters away when they witnessed the predators tackle the defenseless keeper to the ground. A doctor at the prominent Thai hospital who was visiting the park at the time said they set upon him while he was getting out of his car after gradually approaching him. He said, the lion attacked the zookeeper while he was getting out of his car. It was about 10 meters away, then slowly approached and grabbed the zookeeper from behind, dragging him to the ground and biting him. 3 or 4 other lions then joined in with the biting of the zookeeper. Many people witnessed the incident but didn't know how to help. They just honked their own car horns and shouted for help. At first, I assumed it was familiar to the zookeepers, as the person who was bitten might have been a lion keeper. I thought the lions were trying to hug him, so no one went near the area. The attack only ceased when zoo officials arrived armed, causing the lions to flee into the wilderness. However, they were too late to save the unnamed staff member who had already succumbed to his wounds. In total, the attack lasted for approximately 15 minutes. A witness said that before the zookeeper was rushed to hospital, he was declared dead. Representatives from the Bangkok World Safari Park have yet to comment on the incident, which has left the public in shock. One social media user posted a warning on Facebook about the unpredictability of wild animals, saying, "Don't trust a wild animal. Even domesticated animals sometimes turn against their keepers." They also added just for transparency there, my recording just stopped very weirdly in the middle of something, so I had to go back. Anyway, another user who claimed to have previously visited the zoo stated that the staff were just chilling with their windows down while driving through the safari park. They added, "I remember being worried that the staff in those enclosures were just chilling with their windows down when we drive through. RIP to that man." So there you go. 2 quite similar stories. Two zookeepers killed in Oklahoma by a tiger, and in Thailand by some lions. There you go. I think we need not a funny story, but a more lighthearted story to close us out. An Australian singer who I'm sure we're all very familiar with, G Flip. You guys have heard of G Flip, surely. Most famous Australian singer of all time? No? Okay, well, G Flip was attacked by a squirrel. Okay, so G Flip, it starts off like we're supposed to know who that is, has caught the attention of fans after sharing that they were attacked by an animal they initially thought was cute. The Australian singer, who uses they-them pronouns, why add that in? That's good, but why add it? Posted a video on Sunday revealing a run-in with a squirrel ended with a visit to an emergency room. Squirrels are not native to Australia, and the 2 species that were introduced to the country are now believed to be extinct, except for colonies housed in zoos. I didn't actually know we had introduced squirrels here. But for G-Flip, who is based in the US, where there are over 200 species of squirrels, what began as a seemingly harmless interaction quickly turned into a tale of what not to pet. Quote, "I had the most hectic fucking day," G-Flip said on TikTok. "First of all, I got bitten by a squirrel. I thought I wanted a snack. No, it wanted to fucking give me rabies. And then I'm in the ER, and now I've got a tetanus shot. I just wanted a day off. And I just wanted a day off. I just wanted a fucking day off. The singer was lying by the pool when the squirrel came out of nowhere. In the video, G-Flip shows their bandaged finger, and some fans expressed their concern, wishing them a speedy recovery. But most of the American followers quickly pointed out the singer's Australian pronunciation of squirrel. Please keep saying squirrel, one person said. I'm never saying squirrel any other way. You're so cute. Isn't that how you say it? Squirrel? I'm Australian and that's how I say it. Squirrel. What do you guys call it? Squirrel. I don't know. Squirrel. I'm never saying squirrel any other way. You're so cute. The funny thing is, in Australia, with all the crazy animals that could have bitten you by laying in the pool, it's in the US that something supposedly cute like a squirrel bites you. G-Flip, who is originally from Melbourne, is largely based in the US and is married to American selling sunset star Crystal Staus. Cool. I don't know who that is. In July 2022, Staus and G-Flip secretly tied the knot in Las Vegas. They have since celebrated saying, I do 3 more times, with the singer revealing it's their goal to wed every year. Oh, that's kind of nice. I really do think it's healthy, and it's good to update your vows every year. I think all couples should do it, G-Flip told Us Weekly in May. I reckon it makes you stronger, looking at your person in the eyes and promising them new things every year. Strauss added, we normally plan it a week out, so it's super last minute and it's more spontaneous. We don't ever want to take the fun out of it because it becomes a chore. That's the only rule. It can't be stressful. If you're newlyweds every year, it helps to keep things spicy, said G-Flip. Well, I'm not going to take marriage advice from G-Flip, sorry, but I will take squirrel advice from G-Flip and not get bitten by one, I guess. In London, I had a squirrel climb up me and people yelled at me, but hey, it was cute and it wasn't going to bite me. I was keeping my hands well away from it. That's gonna be it, I think, for our episode today. Thank you so much for joining me with our story on Val and the crocodile attack. I want to do a quick Patreon shout out for some very special people. Of course, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/maneaters. You can go there and support the show. And I want to give a shout out to a few people who, where are we up to here? Okay, so some free members and some people who are paid members. Let's see. Is it just one page? Great. 20 people. Riley, one of the day ones. Big thank you, Riley. These are the free members. Riley, the Doberman Connection podcast. Thank you. Seb, thank you. Mark Hansel, Suitable. Lizzie Richter, Tristan Bruce. Oh, Lizzie Richter is a paid member. I'm so sorry. Let me get back to you in a second, Lizzie. We've got Tristan Bruce, Carla Walsh. We've got After and Alasia. We've got Annie Hudson, BT Jaws Gleason, Jessica Ducase, Brandy Dowder, Tracy Coco. Those guys are our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful free members. But then even better than a free member, it's a paid member, baby. We've got Dawn. Dawn has literally been, there was the first Patreon person, and I love her to death. You're a great person. That's a Lion tier member. We have Marcy. Marcy is a Leopard tier member. We have Lizzie, as mentioned before, a Lion tier member. Jack, Puma tier. Lexi, Puma tier. Those two are married. I love them. They're very nice. And finally, we have Alyssa, another Puma team member, and finally Aubrey, our one and only Tiger member. That's the big buck. Wait, no. Yes, she is the only Tiger member. Thank you all so much. You can go to the Patreon to support the show, and yeah, that's about it, guys. Stay safe because it's a jungle out there. I timed this badly. Okay, that's yes. Bye.